Thanks for coming at 4 o'clock. Appreciate you all. So our panel is really small, so we have to make sure we're going to keep our comments brief. My name is Don White. I'm the CEO of Satisfy Labs. We're a conversational AI company focused on physical locations. We partner with everyone from Major League Baseball to music festivals like Lollapalooza, if you're going, or Outside Lands. So from music, entertainment, and retail partners like Macy's, we have a good gamut of clientele. We do have some really diverse experience, both from the developer side and the academic side. So I think I'm going to ask everyone from left to right to give a short bio of what you do, how long you've been doing it, and how your company or yourself personally impact conversational AI with Justina.
Hi. Oh, can you hear me? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Justina Nguyen. I'm the developer evangelist at Dashbot. We do analytics for conversational interfaces, namely chatbots and any third-party applications on voice assistants like Amazon Alexa and the Google Assistant. We've processed over 42 billion messages, so it's pretty exciting, and I'll share some data in the answers that we'll be talking about.
I'm Nancy Munro. I'm the founder and CEO of Verbal Transactions. I've actually had my own kind of corporate training space for about 18 years now, so I handle the corporate training side of the equation. So I pioneered some conversation simulators, and so I'm really significantly deep into a call center simulator right now that uses both speech recognition, AI, and text-to-speech.
Hello, I'm Brooke Hawkins. I'm a content designer at Nuance. I'm the person in the weeds designing all of your favorite virtual assistants on behalf of large Fortune 500 companies that you probably interact with in your spare time. So yeah, I'm very embedded in the design world and design practices and designing the personalities of the chatbots you use.
Hi, my name is Emma Furlong. I'm the head of content strategy at Clink. Clink is a conversational AI platform that creates conversational solutions for enterprises. In addition to creating those solutions, we also have created a platform that enables the enterprises we work with to build their own conversational experiences in-house from scratch. So I'll be talking a little more about what that platform approach to conversational AI looks like and some of the ways we've innovated from the technological perspective.
Is this on? Great. My name is Bernie Brafman. I'm with Sensory. Sensory's been around for 24 years now, focused on user experience based on embedded AI at the edge.
Hi, my name is Yvette Wan. I'm a professor here at NJIT in the Department of Informatics and also director of the Social Interaction Lab. Because I'm in academia, I have the ability to be a little bit creative and look forward at what the technologies would be in the future. So I've been doing experiments related to what happens when you add things like haptics and a face to conversational agents.
I feel like this could be 2 panels. So I'm trying to think about how to navigate. So here's our agenda. 4:55, we leave. So says my speaker notes. It says leave 5 minutes early. So at 4:50, we're going to do a lightning round summary. So our goal today is to give you tangible things in conversational AI that you can take away back to your jobs. How many people here are developers? And how many people would be consumers, like buyers of the software? And how many people are just observing and really don't? Is there a third type of person? Sorry, developer and designer are not the same people. So let's start with a question that will both apply to the developer designer side. So how do we select personalities for development? There are customers looking for, maybe it's humor, or maybe it's some cutesy little thing. Like, what impact does personality have in as you think about design and deployment? Whoever wants to go first. You got it. You're ready. I see it.
I can start. So since Clink is a company that works with enterprises, we tend to fall within the mold of the goals of the companies that we work with. That being said, what we have found is oftentimes when you put so much personality into a bot where it's all gimmicks and games, it kind of dilutes the actual purpose of the bot, which is, at the end of the day, to simplify the end user's lives, right? Why are we even talking about conversational AI? We want to make people's people's lives simpler and more efficient. And so when you clutter a bot with too much personality, we've found that the users aren't actually using the real features that the bot was designed to help the user with. So it's all about navigating that line between making it something that people enjoy interacting with, but also providing real value to the user.
I'm going to piggyback on that a little bit. How many of you are familiar with the term Uncanny Valley? So this is used in robotics to refer to something that, this aversive feeling that people get when a machine becomes too human, but not exactly like human. And because we're at the very beginning of voice technology right now, we're seeing a lot of that, in which you think that making something more human would actually appeal more to customers, but customers are very, this is kind of like new territory for them as well. And so sometimes they can get like this weirded out feeling, which actually does not work in your favor. So I think that, because I'm a researcher, I think it's like very important to actually test out your ideas before you launch them, because you think that adding this more human component will be good, but right now, for the majority of customers out there, it might be a little bit too much.
I know Justina has something to say. What say you, Dashbot?
From an analytics perspective, we see it a little bit different here. We actually see brands and developers reporting back an increase in engagement when people bake in personality. So we define engagement as sessions per user. And when we say personality, it's more of, about nearly 20% of bots every month get questions like, are you a human or are you a bot? What's your name? Are you a boy or girl? We're not necessarily encouraging folks to be very funny. We still want people to be on brand, but oftentimes brands and developers do think about personality, because at the end of the day, it's a conversation. So making sure that your bot can respond to things like hi or what's your name. So being on brand, I think, is really important when it comes to baking in personality and setting expectations for users when they talk to your bot. Qualitatively speaking, not from the analytical perspective. Actually, I can't answer this. So about nearly 12% of bots every month get the message, I love you. But on the flip side, 9% receive, I hate you. And then right in the middle, there are a few bots that actually get both kinds of messages. So I think whether a user's testing this or seeing what the bot would say in response to this, I don't know if it's actual real attachment, but I would say, if your bot's very productive and effective at what it does, people can love what it does. I don't know if I'm not on the team of people loving or being in love with bots, so not necessarily.
There has been a lot of evidence, though, that people form very strong attachments, and maybe they're not like what movies portray as being on the extreme, but we definitely do see that. Very small things like what you name your bot or the perceived gender of the bot actually changes a lot of interactions. So we've done experiments where we've had a bot that has a name that's kind of like a man and a bot that's named kind of like a woman, and people interact with it very differently, and they develop these kind of perceived relationships, even when they know it's not a living thing. So I think that's very interesting.
Following up on that, I just want to transition. You talked a little bit, I know Bernie has as well, about having a face. So we talk about a personality. So in the verbal interaction via voice, it's giving you some highlights. It might be funny, it might be sarcastic or sassy. But where does the face come in? Is it vital? Is it nice to have? Circumstantial? What's your view?
Well, we certainly think it adds to the engagement. So in our offering, which, by the way, is all on device, we have a natural language processing, natural language understanding. That's via a large vocabulary continuous speech recognizer. We've got live-sounding text-to-speech that aligns with a lip-syncing 3D avatar. And for certain kinds of transactions, maybe short ones, where you're not building a relationship, you're just trying to get something done, that works out really well in terms of engagement.
Brooke, I'd love to hear your perspective. I've used Nuance. particularly in the robotic space, in the conversational. So what have you seen from the design perspective where there is a face? It could be a robot face. It doesn't have to be a avatar face. How does the face change engagement of how your technology would work?
Yeah, we do have data, I believe, that shows, I mean, typically on the virtual assistants that I'm designing, there's a kind of cartoon face. I think that helps avoid the Uncanny Valley, although people still sometimes assume the virtual assistant is a human. But there is research that shows when there's some kind of cartoon avatar or a little bit of a friendly face associated, that customers develop a stronger bond with the virtual assistant.
Funny story. So we have a product in Atlanta for the Atlanta Falcons. And Arthur Blank, who's the owner, former Home Depot, put his face as the face with the little mustache and the gray hair. Know that when someone talks to someone and says, "Hey Arthur, why are you so rich? Hey Arthur, I got something to say to you." So sometimes if the caricature is a real person, just put the red lights on, because they don't always like to see how people really feel about them. So is it fair to say fictitious people are the right for bots? Once you put a real human likeness to it, there's risk of it going off the rails. Fair statement? No one disagrees? There's like
well, I think it really depends on the end goal of the bot, right? So if you're just trying to have a bot that is engaging for your customers, is fun to interact with, perhaps having an avatar facilitates that, that like nice, happy feeling of interacting with it. But if the purpose of the bot is just to really help your customers access data quickly and have a really seamless and quick interaction, then I think the face might clutter that experience a bit.
And face doesn't necessarily always have to be human. There are some conversational agents in Asia, for example, where they have like a bear. It looks like a stuffed little animal, and the way that children interact with it is very different.
Now, moving to the controversial subject, bots and people. We already talked about the Uncanny Valley a little bit, but in your opinion, we could start left to right, get 3 sentences each. Are bots going to replace people? Is this a real fear? And how should designers and developers and consumers be thinking about that type of economic impact?
Sure. 3 sentences. No, bots are not going to replace people. I see them personally as a resource or complementary to people. I find that with especially enterprise companies, when they introduce bots, especially to their customer service teams, they're very careful to say, hey, this is a resource, this is a tool. And they actually implore their customer service team to make the chatbot even better, because the customer service representatives know exactly what people are going to ask and can anticipate, so they can fully build out that chatbot. The answer is just no.
I'd say no, but there's a lot of people pushing for it to replace certain people, especially in an automation capacity, especially in call centers that I spend a lot of time in. Those things can be automated. They're using a lot of bots for, and so the manufacturers of that software are really pushing to say, hey, this can decrease your capacity for onboarding new people. I don't think it's going to get there, but I think there's a lot of people that are driving to get it there, but I don't think it will. It will replace some, there's no doubt, but not to the masses.
Yep, I would agree. I think a lot of the enterprise companies that I work with come into a position where they're purchasing software, want to build the VA, ideally to save money in contact center. So sometimes they even have a number in mind, like we hope to save or replace 8 positions with the VA or something like that. But increasingly I see opportunities, and our software allows contact center representatives to use our software and some back-end integrations we have to do their job more effectively and answer even more questions more frequently. So while there may be fewer contact center jobs, they're answering a larger volume of conversations.
Before you answer, I want to switch the question, because thematically I was getting a theme. Will enterprises hire differently because of the existence of bot technology? So we're not talking about replacing people, but will the talent they'd look to acquire change? And how will that impact the design and deployment aspect?
Absolutely, it will change. I think increasingly we see quite a demand for data scientists, machine learning experts, right? People that can actually pursue these fields and create conversational AI. How that affects design and deployment. I think, again, going back to whenever you're creating an experience for your customers, you have to think about what value they can get from it. And so that all comes down to experience. So if you're hiring people that can deliver, the latest techniques in natural language processing, natural language understanding to deliver the most robust experience, not a chatbot that's brittle and will break when it hears one word it's never heard before, but can learn and understands context and nuance. Like, you want to hire people that can deliver that experience for you and add value in that way.
The great thing about being on a panel with a lot of really smart people is you can just say, yeah, I agree with that.
Well, if that's true, Bernie, then I want to transition to privacy. So everyone says, how come it's not more personalized? Why doesn't it know more things about me? How come it didn't suggest that thing, but I'm turning off my location services, I'm going to delete all my cookies, and I don't want to tell you anything about me. So there's this constant balance of creepy versus useful. So Bernie, from your perspective, how can we look to design things that protect the privacy of the user but still give them the engagement goals that they have for those really enriched experiences?
Well, it's also great to have a really smart moderator, because that's a great question.
Well, I wrote it down when you told me to ask you.
So as I mentioned earlier, our offering is somewhat unique in that everything is on device, including biometric authentication, so that you can complete the entire transaction on device with no private data going anywhere other than the minimal amount encrypted and tokenized to get the transaction done. So if you can imagine, a financial interaction with a financial institution where you authenticate on device and say what you want to do, and then a tokenized, unencryptable version of just the request and the fact that you're authenticated goes to the back end to get executed. That's a really great protection of privacy, and that's one of the things that we enjoy about being able to offer a complete solution all on device. Sorry? Sensory.
His company.
Yeah.
And what industries, real quick, industries, Bernie, that are the most concerned?
Well, Sensory's got broad reach across many industries, but for the chatbot stuff, we've got two public-facing demos. One is around finance, and the other is around ordering coffee.
So real private stuff there. My account and my cappuccino. It's good.
I'm so glad we're having this discussion about privacy, because usually that doesn't really happen very much at the developer level, but is increasingly important, I think. From the user perspective, what we're seeing a lot, at least from the research side, is that people do not like this on and off button, where one is you have to give up everything, and then the other option is you say, no to everything and you don't use a service, which is not a really good option. So I think that having these kind of multiple tiers of privacy where people can opt into different things, for example, like when I'm talking about entertainment or music, that's fine. I'm happy to share that with any company. But when I'm talking about my health, maybe that's something that I do not want to share with multiple third parties. And so I think that going forward, like right now, most of the services that you think about do not have this multiple tier of privacy. It's like the terms of service, you say okay and that's fine. But as consumers are becoming more savvy about privacy, they're going to be wanting that in the future.
Just to add on to that, something that we found in the market working with enterprises deploying conversational AI, Clink started in the financial services space, and almost all of our customers asked that we deploy our solution on premise, which we gladly did, because that means all of their clients' data lives with them, and so we don't touch it, we never see it. And so that way, we're actually able to give customers the insights around their data and around their spending that they want without them having to worry about some other third party, as you mentioned, going in, right? So having that level of security and trusting only the enterprise that you're working with instead of all of these other institutions, I think is really valuable moving forward as we continue to conversationally enable more experiences.
I just wanted to add one quick point to that. From the analytics perspective, because we work with a lot of data, we actually find that working with financial institutions that they're very forward-thinking, and the days of being on-prem, I think, we're slowly moving away from that. We're actually seeing quite a few financial institutions move things to be on cloud. So I feel like they're understanding the benefits that they can provide to their user if they're more flexible. And also from our perspective as an analytics company, we're flexible with how we work with them to meet their technical needs.
I mean, the people in this room want cloud, am I right? Like the on-prem thing, huge expense, you send them a bill, you show this on-prem massive multi-6-digit number, and they go, why are you so expensive? And you go, well, we'll put it in the cloud for a third of that. And then they go, oh, but then we have privacy issues. And you say, well, Amazon is an impenetrable force. How could that ever happen in AWS? Like that's, So I'm appreciating this dialogue. We're 20 minutes in. I want to pause here on these themes to get questions before we go into some other new content. So we've covered personality design, privacy, and some of the bot replacement. I just want to see if anyone in here had a question about one of those things. We kind of direct it while it's still a warm topic. Yes?
So my experience, I'm sure, mirrors those many other people where, it's either all on or all off, and each app is different. But I'm envisioning a time where I might say, oh, like all the apps, let's say, that I put in this box, because I'm grouping them together because they're productivity or because they're like assistants or whatever, they're all made by different companies. So right now, none of them speak to one another. But my thought would be, well, I'd like the ones within this group to talk to one another. So, perhaps within my healthcare providers' portals, or, so you don't have to enter your name and address every single time, or within your, work suite. But I feel like there's just an inherent barrier to that with just, different companies in competition and not like sharing or playing nicely.
You're talking about aggregators. You want like an AI aggregator, like your credit cards, for example. They'd all be tied together into one solution.
No, not that. I would want the knowledge of one particular app to be able to share what I've shared with that without my having to reshare it with, let's say, a like-minded app, or for argument's sake, you could say any other. Why do you have to enter it into each one? But not that everything knows everything.
So it's your permissioning. You say, hey, you two apps, you guys are friends. I'm making you friends.
Yes.
Okay. Who wants to comment on this?
Sounds like a startup idea, potentially.
Do you need investors?
I'll be taking donations at the end of the talk.
I appreciate this comment. Is there another question, comment on these themes? Yes.
So I think Justina did a presentation earlier about the analytics of your chatbots, and I think those analytics were like offline. Do any of your companies do like online analytics? Do you all leverage something about the dialogue or something in the interaction with these chatbots to better inform kind of decisions that they're making? So you were frustrated, typing, through things to those better inform your algorithms.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Clink, we actually provide all of our customers with a training platform to, in addition to training their own AI, to also monitor their customers' usage and behavior metrics. And so you can see everything from, what percentage of competencies, that's what we call the basically features of the AI, went out of scope, what was the sentiment there, all these different analytics that you can see within the platform. And what's really powerful about having those analytics in the actual same platform that you use to train and deploy the AI is right from that analytics screen. If you did find a problem, you can go and change it right there. So having that toolkit to improve upon your AI instantly, and like you said, online, is what we're going for.
Definitely. We have similar capability at Nuance as well. Obviously, we're a huge company and work with other large companies, so we have teams at Nuance that kind of follow, once we've deployed and released a chatbot, those teams kind of help that company optimize over time. So even though we're training our clients, of course, on the tools that we have available, they're kind of set up with a customer service team that is monitoring their data, providing reports, and helping them improve and add new intents, for example, to a VA over time based on real conversations.
The presentation I gave earlier was more so about industry data insights. So how consumers are using their smart devices, what we're seeing that they say to chatbots. But Dashbot actually offers live transcripts. So if you're seeing that a session's going sideways, you can actually pause the bot, have a live agent jump in, increase that conversion, or take the conversation to a more positive note, and then re-engage the bot from there. And actually, one of our most used features is live transcripts. People want to see exactly, if you're deploying something new, people want to see what people are saying. So we sessionize all of those so you're able to see, by user, by session, exactly what people are saying there.
So I want to change topic slightly, given the room that we're in. So now I want to talk about customers. So anyone who's ever tried to sell a product like this to a customer has 5 or 6 horror stories about like, oh, how come it didn't just go ask Google? And you're like, well, if you wanted to go ask Google, then go ask Google. Like, that's not what we're building here. How much should it know? What knowledge does it have? How many different utterances are built in? So if you could we could start actually from the academic perspective. What is the biggest challenge with the customers that are buying, these enterprises that are buying, understanding the limits and robustness of this type of technology?
I think the biggest challenge is that the customer, there's no one customer. There's so many different types, and you have to, there are some people who say, oh, you should figure out who your target customer is and then find out more about them. But then other people are like, no, you have to do everything broadly. So like, who do you listen to? I think intuitively, like from a marketing perspective, you would want to identify your target customer, but then you might be pigeonholing yourself. And so I think the really important thing is to understand like how well your technology adapts to different kind of situations. And so, for example, this was brought up in one of the earlier panels as well, but if you don't have like a standard American accent, for example, a lot of the current technologies aren't able to pick that up. So you're isolating a huge demographic of non-native or Northeast accent people. And so if your technology is really unable to deal with that, then maybe it's better to kind of focus on, people who have like stronger pronunciation skills. And so I think it has to go hand in hand with what your technology is able to do. And that might be like kind of like a backwards way of thinking about it, but I think it's really important because like if you are trying to get at this larger audience, for example, let's say you're trying to target older adults and your chatbot is not able to detect when people are speaking like very, very slowly, then that you can't cater to that audience.
Thanks. So my answer is we're a little bit different than some of the other speakers on the panel here, because what we're really offering is the tools to implement this all-on-device embedded chatbot experience. But they're for providers that know what it is they want to do as opposed to sensory doing it all for them.
Yeah, so I really like what you said as well, thinking about the different types of audiences that are going to be using the bot. When Clink started in 2015, it was really the mission to make an impact in people's lives and change people's lives with voice technology. USAA is a customer of ours, and we had a really humbling moment. It was actually my first week at the company, and where we heard that in our pilot Alexa skill with them, they had a visually impaired woman who had interacted with our Alexa skill, and she said she had never felt like she had that much autonomy over her finances before. And so it's those moments that are really special. But to create those moments consistently, it's really about the underlying technology. Because as you mentioned, accents, that's another huge problem. What we found is that if you have a more robust machine learning engine behind your AI, you actually can pick up more diverse accents, because even if the speech to text gets the accent wrong, the AI can actually understand what the user intended via context. And so, as I said, just having that technology behind it is what will enable us now and in the future to really provide a consistent experience, whether you're elderly and may speak potentially slower, whether you have an accent. And I think at the end of the day, it's about providing this not to some privileged people, but to all audiences.
Yeah, I think one of the largest challenges that I have when dealing with customers from a designer's perspective is just kind of educating clients about all of the potential variation that they can take advantage of. I think, like we were mentioning before, I think enterprises or larger companies perhaps will be hiring more skilled team members on their end rather than if those positions are being replaced, for example, in the contact center. to have some touch points on the company side to think about how our tools can be utilized. Definitely as a company or a software company working with these large enterprises, I'm often working with marketing teams or content or like copywriters, but they definitely don't have the same familiarity that we do about all the personalization they can take advantage of. So I definitely see that growing in the future.
Since I work with corporate, I almost tailor-make the library every single time. And so the biggest challenge for them is, what are your agents saying? What is an expected response? How would they interact with the bot? And what is the dialogues that you want to have? And getting them to wrap their head around that sometimes is a real big challenge. And then getting them to realize what the technology is capable of actually measuring. What semantic tags can it pick up if you're using speech rec, if you're using text-to-speech. I had explained to somebody the other day in a demo, no, that was really me interacting with this. I wasn't choosing something to say by pressing a button. I was actually having an interactive conversation. So helping them even get their head wrapped around what this technology can do, because in a corporate space, they're not using this yet. They're using it on the customer-facing side, but internally, we're really kind of pioneering this type of activity within enterprise.
Thanks. From the enterprise perspective, I think the biggest challenge is setting expectations. A lot of enterprise companies like to compare conversational products to existing sales channels. So if their bot or Alexa skill or Google Action isn't performing at the level that existing channels are performing at, they sometimes question whether or not they should invest in it. So educating them on the space, I think, is another really important part, because oftentimes a lot of enterprise companies come to us and they say, what should my KPI be? So thinking that over and remembering, there are a lot of talks here today that talked about remembering what your overall business driver is. I know that sounds very generic, but setting goals and KPIs when you're creating these new conversational products, I think, is the most important part, especially from an analytics perspective. Having people come and say, what should my goal be, is a little challenging because we're defining those goals for them. So setting expectations, I think, is a pretty important one.
I'll do one more, and then I'm coming back for questions. ROI. So we said, well, if it's not going to replace people, but might change the hiring, we're actually potentially saying we'll reallocate people at X salary. And now we have to hire all these data scientists to support this technology. So now it's X plus Y plus Z salary. Any data scientists here? See, they're not even here. But, and sometimes an enterprise goes, so wait a second, so I'm getting this new technology which can scale, and it's going to service my customers, but I'm going to continue my human support because Nancy said so. And so we're going to keep it going, but now I have to hire all these highly expensive new people to support this new tech. So how do you approach a customer who is probably looking at this as a cost savings of human capital, but it's actually going to be probably spending more on human capital as a result of this new feature?
One thing is that I do think you can actually see drastic ROI from the call center use case without firing your agents necessarily, because if you're able to have a bot handle a large volume of low fidelity requests and make those call center agents more efficient, as was echoed earlier, your call center agents are more efficient with their time, which actually does save quite a lot of money. I don't remember the exact statistic, but it's millions of dollars per minutes and seconds. So there's huge ROI there. But something that Clink has found as well is the enterprises that are really innovating in this space are less focused on the ROI and more focused on the experience and really just delivering the best customer experience that they can. And with that, the ROI might be a little bit further down the road. It might be in customer acquisition, right? But or brand recognition or PR.
Marketing. Marketing is budgeting for these things.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be firing half of your workforce to see the ROI.
One thing that I keep running into when I look at these applications is who's collecting all that data to feed into the bot. And so the investment of time and money and resources of feeding the intelligence into the bot is something, again, from an expectation standpoint, but there is a cost associated with that. And how often does that data change is something you have to factor into it as well.
Academia, we want to know what academia has said.
So I do a lot of work on social support, and So when you're looking at, for example, centers that receive calls from people who are wanting to commit suicide or something like that, these are resources where there's never going to be enough people to deal with the number of people who have problems. And so there's a scalability issue when it comes to like healthcare and social support. And where I see this is that the bots are actually helping with that scalability. So it's not so much as a marketing perspective because we're looking at situations that are not about earning money, but I think it's really important to understand that the technology could also be used in those situations as well.
So I'm gonna pause real quick for a few questions on, yep.
I'm wondering if any panelists have worked with the conversations where it goes to a human who maybe clarifies the intent and then goes back without the user knowing a human is involved part-time. Is that normally done, or is that?
Yeah, at Nuance, we definitely have that capability. So it's a feature that customers can pay additional money for. But yeah, certainly. There's obviously the natural language engine can do its best to answer questions, but sometimes when it hits basically a level of incomprehension, it will go to a live agent that can select from a list where they believe that intent should be grouped. Over time, it gets smarter, so hopefully those intents shouldn't need to be hitting incomprehension, but yeah.
We had a situation where the bot, not because the bot was incapable of doing so, but because the person actually needed a human support. So looking at kind of depression or kind of mental health situations where there are certain levels of conversation that it's okay for the person to be interacting with the bot, but at some point they actually need human help, and that's kind of where we intervened at the end.
Another question? Really? I see you. You got a question. Your hand's half up. I'm taking it. I'm going for it.
So I work on designing content, and one challenge we run into is that you can't call a neural network specific, at least not that we know about. So what I was wondering if panelists have any advice for how to approach that problem of getting a neural network to.
Emma's going for it. I could tell.
Could you elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah, so I work with a chatbot, essentially, and sometimes you will want to tell it to say something about liking, Batman or some specific movie. But as far as I know, there's not a way to get a deep neural network to say something about Batman.
An opinion.
I don't know anything specifically about making a bot opinionated necessarily. We deal a lot with having with our, so actually from the academic perspective, so our company actually started out of a research lab at the University of Michigan. And so we've done a lot of innovation around how to handle, different responses, how to handle words it's never heard before, lots of innovative techniques there. But in terms of having it have an opinion, it's not something that we've necessarily seen as a problem or a use case. So I don't really have an insight on that.
It's basically a training issue. You're going to train the system to have a positive bias. So it's really just a response programmed with a positive bias to certain objects. So all the neural network's doing is saying, hey, if someone talks to me about Batman, how do I feel about it? And you're saying, listen, I want you to say, I like it, I love it, I hate it. So it's actually less complex than it sounds, forming an opinion. It's really just training the system, and their responses will have positive connotations. But it's just a response at the end of the day. It's a cause-effect mechanism.
I actually do have an anecdote, now that I think about it.
Well,
I'm sorry.
She can't give me can't get your stage here from Emma.
So when Clink was first starting to pay our rent to get an office space, we built a sentiment analysis engine for another AI company. And the sentiment analysis engine was for Rotten Tomatoes. And they found that the bot had so it analyzed all Rotten Tomatoes reviews and was able to provide a sentiment analysis score. We found that with Kevin Bacon, it was extremely mixed reviews, and that was the one that no matter how much training data we fed it, we couldn't get a consistent sentiment analysis for Kevin Bacon. So.
I mean, I think the other thing is your system is only intelligent as how much data you feed it. And so kind of, pulling a lot from diverse data is really important. I know that a lot of researchers use, for example, Mechanical Turk or other human labor to actually help build those training data sets.
Other question? Training data, since you mentioned it. Mechanical Turk was probably the one everybody started out with at one point or another. And then the issues arise from that because sometimes the people that are in the Mechanical Turk network have no context about what you're doing. We tried to train something on going to a baseball game. Many of the people at Mechanical Turk had never been to a baseball game. So you could imagine the contextual training was really odd. So in training data, bad in, bad out, understood. But what, from your perspective, is some of the most positive training data you can start with without having to optimize the bot once it gets going? And what is the percentage you think accuracy rate in scope bots should be deployed at? Should the KPI be 80% day one and it increments over the next 30 days? Like what's, in your all minds, your benchmarks for how pre-trained and then optimized goes? She just gave the mic, right, to Bernie. She's like, here, Bernie, you got this.
What was that?
Well, no, I was just asking the whole row.
Data that I like as a designer the most that I don't have to deal with cleaning up is chat transcripts,
Sure.
either from like a live chat deployment that exists or other verbatim, basically, conversations from actual users. Often clients don't have that available, so we're kind of piecing and puzzling together and doing a lot of Excel crunching on things like transcripts of conversations with a lot of contact representative notes and things like that that I have to do my best to scrub out. And so it's preferable if I just have raw user inquiry. As far as deployment, I hope I'm not giving information that's proprietary or anything.
Wait, can you speak up a little bit?
Yes.
What do you say?
I mean, I don't know. As a designer, typically we go through an optimization period and we don't feel comfortable launching things that have less than an 80%.
80%.
So that made sense to me.
Clink actually just published an academic paper on this topic. We were researching the optimal quantity of data necessary for a really robust conversational experience, and we found that right between 400 and 600 utterances is around what you need to have a robust bot, but what really matters within those 400 to 600 is the quality of data. So that data curation, what you talked about, people not having the context of the baseball game is what's really key there. Clink has built-in crowdsourcing into the platform and then also working on automated data curation to speed up that process a little bit so that we're not just trying to singly take out outliers about things that don't make sense.
Something that we're working at Dashbot is similar to what Brooke was talking about. Instead of meticulously going through every single phrase, our data scientist actually has developed a report called phrase clustering. So with this kind of analysis, there are 1,000 ways to say what movie is playing at X theater tomorrow. And all those responses are very different. So we've actually saved customers tons and tons of time by clustering all of these kinds of similar phrases for them. A really great case study for training data is with this giant retailer. When you walk in, one of the first things you think about when you walk into their store is, what aisle is this in? So what they did actually was they took all of this data. There's so many ways to say what aisle is X in. And they took all of this data and they actually put it into their Alexa skill. And they put the Alexa skill into their store so that the Alexa skill could actually help customers in store answer their questions. And then they were able to train their bot to answer those specific questions because they knew that they were frequently asked. So that was kind of an interesting one. And then for confidence level, we don't love to benchmark that specifically by giving customers a standard, but the customers report back to us, and I think it's very similar to the talk that came before. Most people actually won't deploy something that they don't believe is 99% confidence. That sounds very high, but if you think about how easy it is for someone to say, Alexa, stop, or Google, stop, that interaction is over. They're gonna forget your skill immediately. There's nothing to remind them to go back to that. So the meticulous developers, the meticulous brands are very careful about what they put out there.
Quick transition to Nancy. Instead of AI training data, how you're using AI to train corporate?
So we have an application that's an immersive simulator for call center agents, and so we have built-in artificial intelligence to, let's say, hi, my name is Nancy, thank you for calling CVS today, how can I help you? If you didn't say thank you for calling CVS, you're going to get a coach talk right into your ear and say, I didn't hear you say thank you for calling CVS. So it gives them real-time feedback, and so there's a lot of studies that talk about giving real-time feedback helps with that learning curve, so you retain that knowledge longer, and it's going to get those agents trained much faster and expose them to more scenarios that they wouldn't get in what they call the nesting period, because more than likely they don't get a large variety of simulations within that time frame, or scenarios in that time frame. So we've built this coaching in, and it really does take people by surprise that it can even do that. And we're not really using anything super duper complex. It's just building that into that level of AI built right into every single simulation.
Time for 2 questions, and then I'm going to closing thoughts. 2 from the audience. Thank you.
Have any of you all, so this has been on my mind the duration of this conference. Do any of you all have some kind of metric that kind of has a relationship between, I guess, like your chatbot system performance and maybe some customer usability metrics? So for instance, do people like your chatbots more if it performs at a higher rate? Is there a correlation between those two? Intuitively, I would think so, but I've heard there's some impractically performing systems that people love. And do you all have any like metrics in your companies where you can actually evaluate the system performance and then how you feel about systems?
I mean, come on, layup.
So in terms of quantifiable metrics, something that we've been asked actually frequently is to develop a report so that once the session is over, you could actually, insert this into the conversation. What did you think of that? So that's like very direct feedback loop, right? But the actual conversations themselves, how people understand whether or not a user liked it, they look at more things. That's not one specific metric. So if you see like a high exit rate at this specific part of the conversation, you're gonna know something's wrong with that. We actually have a report called Top Exit Messages. So there you can see all the customers leaving. The other thing that's really interesting is the message funnel. This report allows you to like hone in on a specific message. And let's say that message is stop. You could see all the messages that came before that. So every single message that caused all those users to leave. So those, I feel like, are what customers define as more like key metrics for whether or not they liked it. The other thing I see often, actually, many developers of Alexa skills and Google Actions, they like very forwardly ask their users to rate their skill or action. And I find that they do this for 2 reasons. One, they want feedback. The other thing is they want to move themselves on that Alexa skill directory because it directly affects your position on that page. The more ratings you have, the more reviews you have, it's going to affect that. And people wanted a report for that, so we have something called the Competitive Intelligence Report where you can benchmark yourself. And actually, you could see, if there's an uptick in ratings and reviews, you're usually moved on that page as well.
We have 3 minutes to my commitment. Is there one last question? Or I'll do lightning round? Yes.
So I think most people, my experience as a UX designer is most people automatically say, oh, they don't want to deal with a bot, they want to deal with a human. But from my perspective, for instance, and this is a very brief, real story, I had to schedule an x-ray, and I was waiting on hold for, more than 2 hours while I was like on the computer, other things, and eventually I created an online profile, and the first thing that happened when I created that profile was it said, message alert, our call center is completely down. Okay, but the first thing I could do was make an appointment for an x-ray. But then when I got there, they said, but you don't need an appointment for an x-ray, so we're not gonna honor this. But then they said from the x-ray, you need an MRI. So I logically went onto the portal to schedule that because that is a scheduled event. Yet I could not schedule that online. And I was waiting on hold again, like within a week, wondering, like, is their system down? And eventually I just like texted back and forth with someone like on my computer saying I need an appointment for X day for Y thing. So in many ways, I feel like there are times when a customer service person, you know, will tell you something and then you call back and they say, oh, well, that prior person was wrong. But if there's like a confined data set, like unless you change what's right and wrong, in many ways that helps people. Although it's very like counterintuitive, that one example I used, I think they should have changed the thing to say, please call back another day, as opposed to like, we're busy. Right, because another time recently I was put into a queue and I was there and then precisely at 5 o'clock, instead of saying thank you for your patience, it said, well, we're closed now, please call back another day. And I was like.
So you want to replace humans with bots?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was trying to show there's positive. Like,
I'm with you. Listen, we have jobs
Well, I could tell you why that happens. These call centers have a mix of legacy systems, new systems. I mean, that's why call center agents have 2-3 screens up, because they're having to constantly bounce from one screen to the next, because they haven't made the investment in, you know, one resource or one tool. So they're toggling between all these things. So that it's part of it's an infrastructure problem.
Okay, we have 1 minute, lightning round. We'll start with that on the corner. The future of bots will look like, fill in the sentence. Because you're an academic. You know the answer.
Right. I think the future of bots will merge into physical robots at some point. Right now we have like this disk, but I think in the future it'll be more interactive. And so if you're looking kind of more into the future, thinking about the tangible aspect of not just the conversation, but the physical thing that's there, I think will matter.
Bernie?
All that and embedded.
Bots that feel like talking to a human in the room, and enterprises that have the tools to build them themselves.
I think bots in my ideal world would be integrated with other resources and share information between things, so you can have a larger impact with the data you're sharing.
I think near future is going to be hands-free, a lot of hands-free applications, and then also a lot of medical applications.
I liked Brooke's answer, but my future of bots is I like the hands-full use case. So if you're a miner in the coal mines and you need to change the temperature, you can use your voice for that. If you're a doctor in the operating room and you need to reference something, you can use your voice for that. So I see a future where voice helps us when our hands are full.
I'm building a bot to screen my daughter's potential boyfriends. So her future is single, I can tell you that. Listen, appreciate you coming. Our goal today was to talk about the art of conversational AI, give you some tangible ideas to either think about from a developer design perspective or consumer perspective. Hope you achieve that goal, and appreciate you coming. Thanks very much.